welcome to the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast, the NBA edition. It is Monday, 11/21, November 21st. We got Thanksgiving coming up in a couple of days, and a good week of basketball. We have a pretty big slate on this Monday, 9 games, main slate starting at 7 Eastern. A bunch of really good games, actually. I'm excited to get into them. We're going to go through our usual format where we're going to break down 2 games. We'll get into that in a second. We'll talk injuries, and then we'll go through positions. But let me first introduce my co-host as usual, Jay Persson, Justin Phan. Justin, how's it going, man? This is quite a slate it's looking to be so far.
Yeah, quite a slate. Headlined by Allen Williams, the new Hassan Whiteside. Allen Williams averaging 19 points, 18 rebounds, 4 blocks, and 3 steals per 36. So that seems pretty decent, you know. Excited again this week. It's going to be a crazy week. Pacing myself early on. We got a 13-game slate on Wednesday and a 15-game slate on Friday. So this 9-game slate is nothing.
Yeah, for real. Jay, what's going on? So Allen Williams or Joel Embiid? Where are you leaning right now?
Jonathan Gibson.
Okay.
I don't think Embiid or Allen Williams ever averaged 42 points per game in the CBA. So until they do that, there's not.
What's the conversion there, Jay Sean?
The conversion
from CBA points to NBA points.
No, actually, Kevin Pelton on ESPN did that. I need to look that up. What it was?
Did he really?
Yeah.
So according to the Jimmer, who's averaging I think 40, it's roughly 4.5 times.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I need to look that up. I'll tweet it out if I can find it. I know KP over at ESPN, he does statistical translations for all leagues. So he does it for Euro and for
He's really prepping for DFS to expand.
Oh, yeah. He's ready. You crush for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jonathan Gibson, Allen Williams, cash game locks.
Yeah, what a slate. Yeah, no, it really is a good slate. We have a lot of crossover games. That's why it's really good. You know, the real reason is because we have Eastern Conference teams playing Western Conference teams, and
for sure,
we all know the Eastern Conference is.
Yeah, definitely. So,
so I looked at the Pelton thing actually. So Chinese players per minute scoring drops off by nearly half when they go to NBA. Rebounding drops off by 26%. Assists drop off by 15%.
So a little bit of a difference.
A little bit of a difference. So like 2 to 1.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It makes sense that Jonathan Gibson's like averaging 20 plus points because he averaged 40 in the CBA.
Yep,
pretty much.
Yeah,
makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean he looked good, in his time with Summer League and stuff. I mean he's definitely a bucket getter. All right, so let's get into the pod, guys. We'll definitely talk about those 2 players for sure. So the 2 games that we're going to break down, one of them, the Allen Williams game, is going to be the Suns versus the Wizards. That has a line of 218, so really high total here. Very bad defenses on both sides, so going to be definitely a game that you want to focus on in DFS tonight. And then the other game we're going to break down has the 3rd highest total, but it's down here a little bit at 209.5. It's the Raptors and the Clips. I think a very interesting real-life game, but also some DFS impact as well. So we'll go through those, but first, as always, we'll kick it to Jay just to sort of run through notable injuries for today.
Yeah, we got a decent amount. Notable injuries start with Justice Winslow, questionable again with that sore left wrist. Joel Embiid, probable sprained left ankle. Jared Bayless was actually upgraded this morning to questionable now with the wrist injury that's held him out the entire season so far. Tyson Chandler and TJ Warren have already both been ruled out again. Devin Booker is questionable with that sprained left ankle. I don't know why they, don't just hold him out and wait for that to heal. Markieff, who exited last game early, said he'll play today, so we don't have to worry about that. Tony Allen, questionable again with the right groin injury. Chandler Parsons is out a minimum of 2 weeks with the left knee bone bruise. Cody Zeller was ruled out this morning once again. We got word that Roy Hibbert will start but be limited to 18 minutes. Paul George and CJ Miles have both already been ruled out for today. Miles Turner is probable after spraining his right ankle last game but playing through it. Dirk and Darren are once again both ruled out. And then Damari Carroll, unlikely to play on the second leg of back-to-back.
All right, yeah, quite the rundown. So definitely keep on monitoring the news feed on the site and also FantasyLabs NBA Twitter account, as always. So, all right, cool. Thanks, Jay, for that. Let's get into our games. So, again, the 2 games is going to be Suns Wiz, and then we'll get into Clips versus the Raptors as well. So, I think the most intriguing guy, or the cash lock, the guy that I think everyone's going to be on and probably want to hear about, is Alan Williams. So let's start with this game, Phoenix, Washington, and talk about, the impact of these injuries. We'll start on the Phoenix side. We have Chandler out. We have, Booker is questionable. We have TJ Warren already ruled out. So quite a bit of stuff here. I just looked using our NBA on-off tool. Just want to provide some data before we jump into this. With Tyson Chandler out, it looks like all of the starters play up in pace, about a little over 5 possessions on average. So, I don't think that's a crazy thing. That's pretty intuitive. Chandler's sort of a slow guy, so playing with Len, playing a little smaller, means that you're going to play at a faster pace, which is good for DFS, more possessions. The person who obviously saw the biggest bump was Alan Williams. His first DK points, he averaged 13.9 plus minus on DK in those games without Chandler. Bledsoe, sort of a sneaky guy to maybe target with these, everyone's going to be on Williams and some of these other value guys. Bledsoe saw the biggest usage bump. He increased his usage by about 2.5%. So, Justin, I'll kick to you. We were joking about it, but Alan Williams is sort of just like the stone lock for cash, right?
Yeah, DK, especially with the pricing being so restrictive, you don't have to think twice. You just lock them in. I think FanDuel, too. Center is really stacked there. There's a lot of options, but Alan Williams at his price, we have him at a projected plus-minus of 11.1 currently on FanDuel, which makes him, easily the best value play of the day.
It's about the highest we've had all year, right?
Yeah, we had a couple of big Boban ones last year, but
yeah.
Alan Williams is even better, dare I say. But yeah, on the Phoenix side, I think it's tricky. I think PJ Tucker you can look at as a punt play. He's been shooting terribly from the field, so he should see some regression there. But I think it's still a little thin. But you can look at him. Phoenix, I'm kind of dodging. Otherwise, outside of Len, because I think Booker's going to play enough to where it's going to cut into guys like Brandon Knight. I'm not going to really have too much exposure to him. Even tournaments, like it's okay, but not great. Bledsoe's more of a tournament play for me as well. You kind of look. Otherwise, it's Marquise Chris doesn't play enough, and Tyler Ulis has been balling out, but I expect his minutes to come down a little here. So in cash for me, it's Alex Len. It's Alan Williams. I want to stick with that front court where I know these guys are going to split 48 minutes total. And then I'm going to look at Bledsoe in tournaments. And that's about it. Tucker is a punt play potentially.
Yeah, Tucker's interesting in that he is the second best plus minus with Chandler off the court. He's averaged plus 9.8 plus minus with Chandler off the court in his 6 games this year. So I think we're sort of looking at his like field goal attempts and low usage rate and think that he's risky. And I think he is. Those games he was in like the just like bare minimum range, like 3K on DK. Now he's up at like 4 range. So I think you're right. It makes it a little more thin, but not a guy that you have to be completely off. Anyway,
so let me ask you guys this. So on FanDuel, that's where Tucker, you would look at him potentially as a punt play at 4K. So would you take GR3, Glenn Robinson the third at 3,500 or PJ Tucker at 4K?
We'll get into GR3 soon, but yeah, I think Tucker's probably safer, just with the defensive matchup that GR3's got going against KD. We'll kind of see how that plays out. I don't expect it to double again, but
I would prefer Tucker in this juicy game. And if you look, he's not taking a lot of shots, but he's been very good rebounding the ball on the wing. Has some safety with his peripheral stats as well. So I would lean Tucker, I think. Where are you at, Justin?
I don't know. I think I'd probably gamble a little bit on GR3's upside. Just the minutes there have been really good. You kind of look at their options. Other options is Georges Niang, kind of their only other small forward. So I don't expect a double-double, but if he's going to play big minutes, I kind of like that.
So where would you expect his minutes to be? We're sort of get off this game a little bit, but where would you put GR3's minutes?
He played 45 last
I know, but that was with
overtime and
that
That's a close game. So, I mean, right now I have him for 32. That's kind of factoring in a potential blowout. There's a 12.5 line on that game.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't know, if they somehow manage to keep this close at home on the second leg of a back-to-back, then he has minutes upside.
I don't see a narrative in which this game is super close.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't think this is. Yeah, I expect the Warriors to cover in this one. But
so maybe we agree that we prefer Tucker and Cash if you're going to go. I mean, I think they're probably both a little thin, but Tucker and Cash and GR3 has maybe a little more upside. Ownership as well, probably.
Yeah, I'd still honestly probably go GR3 and Cash.
Tucker shot 3 times in 31 minutes last game. I mean, and he hasn't hit 23 plus FanDuel points in all but one game this season. So it's hard to really get too excited about him. We just saw GR3 what he can do.
I mean, yeah, but he might GR3. I mean, he could shoot 10 more times and still have less actual field goals.
Sure.
Yeah, I think both of them are a little thin in Cash, but we can.
I agree.
I think it's close for sure. All right. So, anyone else on Phoenix? I mean, how do we think about Len?
Yeah, Len's clear for me on FanDuel at power forward, especially too without the depth of center. It's kind of tough to pinpoint. You already got Big Sauce, Allen Williams, who's good to go. Len's averaged 27.4 DK points in 6 games Chandler's missed this season, so. He has a wide range. His ceiling's been over 40, I believe, and his floor's 15 as a starter. So it's volatile, but you like the production per minute basis, and the overall pace of this game is pretty good, like you mentioned earlier. So I'm still willing to roll Len for sure. I think a guy who we're overlooking, Bledsoe tournament only, 9th in, but Booker, if he's healthy, has a fantastic matchup. The Wizards.
I just don't think he's healthy.
I'm off that, Jay. I just don't see a scenario where he plays 30 plus minutes in this one.
I don't think Earl Watson is a coach. He's so stupid that he knew he was limping and he kept him in.
Right, but that's a bad thing because I'd feel a lot better if Booker sat last game. I mean, he played on it.
Sure. I would too.
He's been playing. I mean, he played 18 minutes last game.
So. For 3% ownership, you don't want any Booker against the Wizards.
I just think it's really thin because I don't see the minutes. Yeah, I think there's a very small chance he sees 30 plus minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the shot when you have 100,000 people, I think it's warranted in there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think that there's some value in that. So Jay, just going back to your point on Lynn, I think Lynn is interesting. He in a vacuum is a really good play, but then you also have to bring up the context of, you want to play Allen Williams. Are you okay with playing both, or does that make him a little less appealing?
No, it does for sure. Yeah, DK, it's different, and Len's priced up. He's a season high 5K over there. So I prefer Len more on FanDuel.
Okay.
And then we'll get into center later, but center is just so loaded.
Right.
We're probably going to want to go 2 centers on DK, and I don't know if Len makes the cut on a value perspective.
Fair enough. Okay. All right, let's get into this other side. So Washington side, John Wall is a little pricey. He's at 9K on DK, and he's at 9.2. On FanDuel, sort of flip-flops with Steph in terms of who's more expensive on either side. But it seems like this is a really, really nice matchup. I mean, what are your thoughts on Wall? And we can sort of bring in Steph here. I mean, which do you prefer of the two, Justin?
I'll give me Wall, especially on FanDuel. I think Wall is one of the top plays for me. I think people are going to look at Steph. People are going to look at Jeff Teague. We can get into Teague and the Pacers later. I think that game is really interesting just overall, just because with the injuries and stuff, and people are going to be looking at them. All those guys have been crushing Jeff Teague, Thaddeus Young, Miles Turner. But I think this is kind of a really bad spot on a road back-to-back where they're underdogs by 12.5 points. But let's get back to Wall. I think Wall, for me, 9,200 on FanDuel, really juicy matchup. He's 35.5% usage rate in his last 3 games. And in those 3 games, he's averaged 51.3 DK points per 36 minutes. I mean, he's just been raging. I mean, we saw him put up 40 against Philly in 20 something minutes. It was like ridiculous. But Wall is right up there, and I think Bradley Beal is probably my top shooting guard on FanDuel at
because of his price.
5,700. No, his price is really good too, obviously, but this matchup is really juicy. The Suns have been the worst team defending shooting guards this season. They're third in average points given up to shooting guards, and they're first in plus minus at plus 4.1 DK points this season. So really juicy matchup. And the only thing with Beal really is just the minutes. And we saw last game that they weren't shy trying him out. He played 40.2 minutes. So I think 34 minutes is kind of conservative in this one, even if it gets away. I like Beal a lot. I think it's like Beal and maybe like Seth Curry probably for me on FanDuel. It's going to be really tough fading Harden, but those are the top two at this point.
Yeah, and it's important to note, you have to look at pace and possessions because, 34 minutes in this game is much different than 34 minutes in a different game. The Suns are the fastest team in the league, and they play even faster without Chandler. So, at 34 minutes in this game means a ton of possessions. So definitely worth noting. The guy that I'm curious about on your end, and you can talk about and Beal as well, Jay, Keith, Markieff Morris. This is the ultimate revenge game going against the Suns again. He had this ankle injury, but it looks like he's going to play. What are your thoughts on him? Are you worried about the ankle? Are you into the narrative? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm into the narrative. Me and Justin were actually talking about some of these narrative guys and who, we need like a narrative factor of who it's strongest for.
We need narrative street power rankings.
This is about as high as it gets, I think.
This is probably top 5.
It's up there for sure, and I'm down to make that list
so much.
Yeah, because they wronged his brother too.
Right.
Yeah. It's blood, man.
So personal. Yeah.
Yeah, there's blood on the line. I think it's a great leverage spot, Markieff. I think you look at this team and Wall and Beal, I don't need to expand on that. They're both fantastic plays. And then you have Otto Porter, who's been really consistent. His price is up to 6,200. I still think he's fine, though. You're going to get a nice floor from him with those big minutes. Gortat, I think, is a great tournament play in the spot as well. I really like targeting the Suns in general, especially this season. Like you said, number 1 in pace, not a great defensive team. Everybody's getting extra possessions. But Markieff's the guy who I think people are going to be a bit down on with his recent play. Has been not great, and the ankle injury. But because of that ankle injury, he did say he's fine. But he's been shooting poor, so I'm not really willing to roll him in cash. I don't think we have some value at power forward. To where you have similar guys. We'll get into Thaddeus Young a bit later. But I think Markieff makes for a tournament play only for me. But definitely one I like. You got that revenge skill, but you also got the factor that everybody's going to be on the backcourt, especially John Wall, that you have the contrarian pick kind of attacking the Suns' front court.
Sure, yeah, and we try to get into some of the individual matchups here. Really, both teams just suck really bad on defense. Washington is 25th on defense, and Phoenix is 23rd. Phoenix again plays at a top pace, so there's a reason that this line is high at 218. So, I don't think you have to get into individual matchups a whole lot here. I think you can just assume that there's going to be a lot of scoring all around. Justin, any last thoughts on these guys? Gortat, and also let's put this in context. We've talked about all these guys that we like, but let's sort of rank them. So of this game, let's put like guys that you really want to play. If I had to list, it would probably be Williams, Wall, and then Beal would be my top 3. Justin, do you agree with that?
Yeah, Williams, Wall, Beal. I think Len is there, yeah. Len, Porter, Markieff in there as well.
I think I like Keith a little bit higher than you guys, maybe, but that's fine.
I would tend to agree with you. I think he's borderline cash. I wouldn't mind cashing him today. This game has so much juice, and we've seen spots like this with the Washington before, where all their stars kind of eat and can put up big lines. So I think it kind of just depends on roster construction and what you can fit. I wouldn't mind rolling Keith and cash if it came to it. If I can stay down a little, move down a little, and spend up somewhere else.
Okay. Any last thoughts, Jay, or before we can move on to this
No,
next
that's good. I just gravitate a bit towards the Wizards more. We see the starters play heavy minutes. We've seen the Suns have some really weird kind of minutes lately, due to injuries. But it's just harder to trust them a bit. They are on the road. I do expect Washington to win this game. So I like those guys generally a bit more. And then the Suns are more full of those Big Sauce, Al Williams, and Len, and then kind of more tournament plays.
All right, sounds good. All right, let's move on to the next game we'll talk about, which is going to be Toronto at the Clippers. Probably the most interesting real-life game tonight on the slate. Just probably the two best teams going against each other. Not the two best teams total, but just the level of play is going to be the highest in this one. And a pretty decent total. I mean, it's the third highest total on the board. So if you look at these, the Raps are 8-point dogs because they're on the road, so they're implied for 107.5. And then LA is implied for 108.75. So a little more juice on LA's side. But, if you look across this game, it's a little hard to get excited about any one player. So this is why I sort of wanted to discuss it, because I think people are going to want to play these guys just because, these are some of the best players. DeRozan is as hot as any player in the league this year. CP3, Blake are always really popular guys, but it's hard to find guys to be really excited about it. Am I wrong there, Justin, or do you like some plays here a lot?
No, I don't think I'm going to have any of these guys kind of in my cash score. I think Blake Griffin is kind of the closest for me to approaching a cash game play in this game. His minutes have been really, really nice, even in games where they've kind of let it get away a little bit. And they've played close games lately, which has been really good for these guys' minutes, especially Blake. He's been playing like 37, 38 lately. And their bench is what it is, what we thought it was, a really weak point, and they hemorrhage points. And there's, the stars have to come back in and bail that team out, as usual. So I think Blake is in the mix. We have Kevin Durant on DK. We have Thaddeus Young, obviously, on both DK and FanDuel. So not really locked in just yet. My roster's better. I don't mind Blake and Cash. I think the spotlight for me is kind of going to be on that center matchup. I think it's interesting. I think there's tournament upside for both those guys. And we saw DeAndre Jordan last season average 39.5 DK points in 2 games against the Raptors. One game he went up against Valanciunas, and one game he went up against Biombo, which is an even better defender. So he's still 6,400 on DK. So anytime DeAndre is going to stay at that price point on DK, I'm in. I'm double potential, and both these guys are going to have to see healthy minutes with a traditional big versus big matchup. And same goes for Valanciunas. He came off a big 23-14 game last on Sunday versus Boogie. That was his first 35-plus DK total game since the season opener. So, in this matchup, I can see him playing, easily 32-plus minutes against DeAndre. So, I think he's a decent tournament option too. So, for me, it's kind of those two. And, I'm off DeRozan.
Sure.
We talked about how he's matchup proof, and that's mostly true, but Mbah Moute is such a good wing defender. And I don't want to go back to that well. I think there are better plays at shooting guard and for you to go to, and I don't think DeRozan is a must. And Lowry, I don't think is even too strong of a tournament play, especially against CP3. Jay and I talked about, we went through kind of the opponents that have gone up against CP3 this season, and they haven't had much success shooting. So that's about it for me. I think those, Blake Griffin, Valanciunas, and DeAndre Jordan.
Fair enough. Yeah, DeRozan's interesting. Looking at some of his recent games earlier, his field goal percentage, effective field goal percentage, whatever you want to look at, it has dropped significantly in the last 5 games. We always knew that regression was going to come. The dude is not going to shoot 56% from the field, especially on mid-ranges. So, but the issue is, this regression is going to come. He's still going to be a valuable DFS guy throughout the year, but unfortunately, regression's coming, but we haven't seen a similar regression in price yet. So you're still paying peak DeRozan, but you're potentially not getting peak performance anymore. So it makes me a little skeptical to roll out a lot of him. A guy you didn't mention, which I'm actually really interested in, and we can sort of talk why this is, CP3. We know that Toronto is sort of it's always been this not great matchup for point guards because we know that Lowry is a good individual defender. But then, just pulling up our trends tool, the third worst team to point guards this year has been the Toronto Raptors. They've allowed 2.9 DK points over salary-based expectations to point guards. They've been really low owned because of that narrative. Jay, I'm curious. I mean, is Lowry being worse? I think it's less Lowry and more just the overall defense with Biyombo has just struggled a little bit. And that's, we're seeing guys get into the lane and finish a little bit easier.
No, I've never really put Lowry up in that elite defensive talent. He has been a good on-ball defender, but this isn't a matchup I'm particularly scared of. Chris Paul is definitely one of my favorite tournament plays. You look at the total of this game, like you said, it very much intrigues me. I do want exposure to this game. Mm-hmm. Chris Paul and DK at just 8,600. I mean, it comes down to ownership with this top-tier point guards. You're going to see high ownership from Wall, and Chris Paul is the perfect pivot there.
He's right there too.
Yeah, I think that game will be a blowout as well. But Chris Paul is probably my favorite. Chris Paul and Blake are my favorite two tournament plays in this game. DeAndre's up there at 6,400 on DK again, and then I'm totally off DeRozan as well. Valanciunas has some upside, but center is just so stacked. You really got to pick your spots there and kind of build. If you're making a lot of tournament laps, you really got to go in on the core, a tight core. One guy, I guess we can talk about whose value play is Norman Powell with Carroll. Unlikely to play. He's averaged 26.9 DK points in the 2 games Carroll has rested that he started. I personally think it's pretty thin to get him in this spot, but I mean, he's an option as a punt play.
Yeah, I mean, I think with some of these other guys that we just talked about before with, the value at that position, I think it's even a little more thin than it would normally be. Justin, you disagree there? Or you?
Yeah, I think Norm's in the mix. DK, like I said, DK's pricing is so restricted that it kind of forces you to take on some of these guys that you don't want to usually play. So I think Norm's in the mix. He played like 28, 29 minutes in those 2 starts for DeMar. And I totally spaced on CP3. He's number 2 right now, point guard on my model for DK. So obviously I like him a lot.
Tournament play elite. So we can use this transition into our point guard spot because I want to give some data here. We project ownership on FanDuel, and we did a pod, me, Justin, and Colin, who's our PGA guy, but he did this for us in our model. So right now it looks like John Wall has projected ownership of 26 to 30%. Steph is at 36 to 40%. He's the highest point guard. Then Chris Paul is only at 13 to 16. So this is a pretty significant drop off. And if you think that, Chris Paul has a high ceiling and it's sort of a sneaky matchup against Lowry, then he's a very, very elite pivot play. So let's go ahead and use that to get into our point guard spot. We obviously are headlined by Wall, Curry, and Paul. We think we've talked about those guys, but value plays. We talked about. We mentioned Gibson. Jay, is the matchup concerning to you at all? I mean, Spurs is obviously not great.
Yeah, it's massively worrisome. I think it comes down to you have a finite amount of these super cheap value plays. You got Allen Williams. The problem with point guard is that it's so top heavy and you have so many good plays, really good plays. You have underpriced guys. That's kind of tough to tank that upside you have there and go Gibson, who has serious downside, especially against the Spurs. So you compare that to the small forward position with GR3, Glenn Robinson III, and there's not as much depth there. So you compare him with Durant or whatever and get away with it. You're not really fading another small forward that a lot of people are going to have that could go off. So at point guard, I am leaning towards spending up and kind of fading Gibson in this spot, and then saving with Allen Williams, Len, whoever on FanDuel, as well as GR3. That's kind of where I'm at now. I think Gibson's certainly in that mix, but you have to remember he's only played 2 games, and you're playing the Spurs. It doesn't matter. Their second unit's good defensively too, so it's not like he's just going to rage garbage time.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. There's guys a little bit right below that top tier. We have Isaiah and Kemba are in that 8 range that I think people would be interested in. But then sort of below them, you mentioned Teague in this high total game. Another guy who's played 35-plus minutes in his last 2 in a really good matchup is Dragic against the Sixers. Justin, what are your thoughts on this point guard position, if you're not going to go the top guys?
Yeah, so just on Dragic, 5 minutes ago while we were recording this pod because Justice Winslow was ruled out again. So Josh Richardson's going to start at the small forward position, presumably, which opens up minutes for Dragic to see 34 to 35 in the spot versus the Sixers. So I think this is a good spot for him. Giannis is obviously a guy that normally headlines point guard spot on DK for us, and at 8,800. Jay and I looked up, he shot like 60+% against the Magic last season and had really good all-around stats. And obviously, didn't put up the number, the raw total, but his role in the offense this season is a lot bigger and his usage is up. So I think this is a good spot for Giannis as well against the Magic. If you talk about pure value plays, I'm not crazy about it, but like Dellavedova against the Magic is okay. You can look at him on FanDuel. He's 4,300. Been seeing 30, 33 minutes. Not terrible. I think it's kind of thin. I probably prefer Gibson as a punt play on FanDuel instead of Dellavedova. We get Gibson at $500 cheaper, and I think Gibson gives you a lot more usage just in general off that bench. So those guys, we mentioned Bledsoe already. Sure, I see anybody else that really stands out. We can cover Harden when we get to shooting guard, but we talked about Jeff Teague, right? So Jeff Teague's in an interesting spot, overall. I was talking to Jay about this last night. Out of the Pacers guys, I think I want light exposures to the Pacers today, given the spot. Like we mentioned, home back to back, 12.5 point underdogs, coming off an overtime game when all those guys played heavy minutes. It's just not optimal at all. So, but I think if you're looking at two guys that out of that team that I play, it's Teague and Thad. I think they're the safest. I think Miles Turner's much more of a tournament play for me today, especially with how deep center is. So I think Teague's still fine, but I don't think he's a must play on FanDuel. What do you guys think?
I think Teague is a little bit of a trap here. I mean, if you look at his recent game logs, he's had two really nice matchups against the Thunder. We know that they're not great against point guards because of Westbrook's offensive burden. Then he played the Suns before that. Those were his massive games. But if you look at his game logs, I mean, he had 6 steals last game. He put up 3 blocks in a game a couple games ago. He's shooting really good efficiency, but just having really weird games. And those weird games where a guy just randomly gets 6 steals and pops out for 40 FanDuel points or 3 blocks when it's a short point guard, those are so random. Those are situations where it makes me very skeptical to believe that these high point totals are really going to continue. So I'm not super into Teague. I don't think that he's I didn't really love him before looking at the box score just because I don't like the spot against the Warriors, but sort of just going through why he's been so good lately, it makes me skeptical that that's really going to continue.
Yeah, I'm going into the slate really kind of worried about the Pacers coming off an overtime game, huge minutes, back-to-back, 13-point underdog. So I'm with you guys. I really want to limit my exposure to the Pacers. I realize they're thin, with C.J. Miles and Paul George down. So I think going one's fine. I think Thad makes the most sense from a positional perspective, and just his soft price, especially on FanDuel. If I'm comparing Teague to, say, Dragic, similar price on FanDuel, I'll lean Dragic for sure with the Winslow news that he's out now. So Dragic for sure, one of my favorite tournament plays at a soft 6,600 on FanDuel. And then, you just have guys, Kemba, obviously playing really well this season. I don't mind tournament exposure to him, even though I don't love the spot. But there's just tons of guys. Isaiah's another guy. You just have so many point guards who are producing a lot, have big upside that you can sprinkle in these tournament exposures. I think the guys who stand out, we already mentioned with Wall. I think Steph will have decent ownership as well. So, I think you kind of just get down the list and pick your spots with some of these guys in tournaments.
Cool. Yeah, the only other guy, and we'll move on to shooting guard after this, that you could potentially have a little exposure to maybe is Conley. He's probably the weirdest point guard in the league this year. He's been
he has massive games and then just –
But his 2 massive games, his 50-point games were both against the Clippers.
Chris Paul, yeah, I know.
He dropped 30 points against the Clippers both times, and then sort of sucked against the Nuggets. He shot 30% against Moutier, which makes no sense, but dropped 30 twice against. my point is that Charlotte has actually been the second worst team to point guards this year in terms of plus minus. So if you're looking at guy who sort of can just randomly pop off, and sort of an underrated matchup can be really, really, really low ownership. Conley, maybe if you're in the shot, throw him in a couple of tournaments. So all right, let's move on. Shooting guard, really interesting. So let's talk through this. I think, normally it's like, oh my God, who am I going to play at shooting guard? It's brutal. I think there's 4 guys that are potentially in play in cash that I would feel comfortable with it. In Beal, Seth Curry, James Harden, and Giannis against the Magic, I think is really underrated here.
Bradley Beal.
Yeah, he was my first guy.
Oh yeah, my bad. Yeah.
No, but those 4 guys, like I'm okay in cash with all those guys, which is really rare. Like I usually never. It's hard to find 2, let alone 4. So Jay, I mean, what are those sort of the top 4 for you, and how would you rank them?
Yeah, they are for sure. I think given the value we have on the slate, GR3, Big Sauce, Allen Williams, we have like 4 guys, Gibson even. I think this is a Harden slate. It makes sense. And generally, look at Detroit's defense, and I don't like targeting them. They're good against every position, especially on the wing. But we looked at Harden's game log last year against Detroit. He had like one of the biggest lines. He crushed both games, but he had like over 70 DK points against them. So I think with the value on FanDuel especially, I think you go Harden for sure on this slate, and then you pick. I think it's a down spot for Curry at shooting guard against the Spurs. I kind of worry about that. I certainly like Beal. I would like to get Beal in there with Harden, but it's probably easier said than done. Who's the other guy?
Giannis.
Right. So Giannis, I think, makes more sense on DK. It's kind of difficult to get him on FanDuel just with, Harden's just, I think, a level above him, and you kind of want to go him, and it's going to be really, really tough to go both there, especially if you want to go Pip at point guard and then potentially go Durant at small forward. So I rank them in Harden, and then probably Beal, and then Curry, and then Giannis as far as FanDuel goes.
Justin, any disagreements there?
No, I think we're on the same page generally. I think the guys beyond that are like Klay Thompson. He's been picking it up lately. The threes have been falling. Percentage have been regressing. Then we mentioned Gibson, Norman Powell as pump plays. James Ennis is interesting as a pump play too, just because he's going to see massive minutes now with Chandler Parsons out. In the first half of the last game that Chandler Parsons missed, he played like over 20 minutes in the first half. So I can easily see Ennis playing like 38 and a half minutes here, which is really nice, and it's hard not to produce and if you're given that much time on the court. So Ennis is interesting as well. Levine I don't like against Bradley too much. And
where are you on Richardson?
Yeah, I think Richardson's going to be up there as an option. I have to see where he ends up after, we get off the spot into projections, but he's definitely interesting. Definitely in the mix. I don't think he's enough to crack that core of 4 guys that we talked about earlier, but he's in that mix, that next group of pump plays.
And the only other 2 guys that stand out, one stands out as in like a guy I would actually play is Batum. Not a great matchup against Memphis, but if you just look at how he's been playing lately, he's been playing really well. So potentially a guy that'd be really low owned that could, play out of the matchup and be okay. And the other guy is, and I think Justin, you can answer this great. Monte Ellis revenge game. Where would you rank that in the factors?
No, they've played each other like at least.
Yeah, it was so old. Yeah, it's like a decade ago.
Like it's 2 teams ago too.
Right.
It's not a past team anymore. I just actually talked about this. Like how much? It's so old. Like it doesn't even matter.
It's too old. I don't even think he remembers playing for them.
I'm not sure he knows who he's playing for right now.
Yeah.
He hasn't really got popped off without PG recently, so there's like no reason to really.
He did that first game, but it's been down.
Yeah. Let me see. So going back to Josh Richardson, I think I'd rather have on FanDuel. If you're gonna
him over Curry,
maybe pick Seth Curry at 42 or Josh Richardson at 44. I'm going to pick Josh Richardson against the Sixers.
Me too.
Okay.
I am too.
Cash or just as a leverage play for tournaments?
I mean, I think he's in the cash mix.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
I just kind of thinking about it a little bit more about how I value Richardson. But yeah, I think he's really nice on FanDuel at 44.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's tough.
There's options, man. Beal, Harden, and Josh Richardson.
Yeah.
I know Jay said you're going to lock in Harden, which I don't disagree with, but I think it's interesting to see at least what you can afford at other positions. But I agree. I mean, Harden's obviously very nice.
Yeah, I think you got to go Harden, man.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you guys on the lower end guys. It's tough. I mean, Curry. That's a tough matchup.
Yeah, Norm Powell's up there too on FanDuel 3,600. I mean, if that's the guy, you're saving 600 from Curry to him, and that gets you Harden or whoever you're after. Then
he's the thinnest for me. But like if it was a difference between Harden and Giannis,
So I don't know. Yeah, it's going to come down to maybe tinkering some other positions to make sure you have that floor with your second shooting guard.
But, okay, makes sense. Let's move on to small forward. Obviously headlined by KD. He's most expensive by quite a bit, about $1,200-$1,500 on both sides. But obviously has this great matchup against Indy. Not a great defense, but the issue is that they are pretty massive favorites. But he's shown that he'll play into the fourth quarters regardless of blowout. So we'll start here, just with KD, and then a really nice matchup for Kawhi as well. But again, could be a blowout against a really bad Dallas team. So what are your thoughts on both of those two top guys, Jay?
Give me KD for sure. This is a matchup, a big matchup for GR3 defending him. I kind of compare it a little bit to, not quite the size differential when KD played Boston, but I do think this one will get out of hand with the Pacers coming off that overtime back-to-back. But you look at the position as a whole, and I think KD's still underpriced, really, and you're just getting such a high floor. There's so much value. You can't really sacrifice the difference between the top play at small forward and the second top play and get away with it, honestly, where you have so much value. It's really tough. So for me, I'm really targeting, especially on FanDuel, KD and Harden and Wall, and then you fill the rest in with value. So for me, KD's number one. Kawhi's a tournament play only. And then you look down, and it's not great. I mean, we've had Harrison Barnes pop up as a play a bunch, but this is a horrible spot for him, of course. He leads the league in isolation play frequency this season, which is crazy. I never thought that would be possible. We saw him struggle heavily against Memphis, who actually allows a league-low 0.63 points per possession against isolation plays. And now he goes around and faces the Spurs, who are the sixth best team against ISO plays. And obviously, you got Kawhi there. So 100% off him. And I think, you look at FanDuel, it makes sense to go GR3 there at min price.
Yeah.
He'll get you Harden. He'll get you KD. He should play some nice minutes because the lack of depth there at that position. So that's where I'm at right now on FanDuel. I think on DK, it's a bit more interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So we have GR3. We also have Tucker. We mentioned him earlier as a potential pump play as well. A little more expensive. So if you prefer the savings for GR3, that's interesting. Justin, I assume that you love KD here. And then I'm also really, we talked about Porter a second ago, but I'm really curious your thoughts, Justin, on Wiggins.
Yeah, so Durant's obviously my number one play. I think generously he has 3 inches on GR3, and he's a lot taller than he's listed, actually.
Yeah, more than 3. I think it's more like 6.
So I think he's listed at like 6'9", but he's like more like 6'11"-ish.
I think he's 7 feet.
Yeah, and GR3 is 6'6". That's a massive height differential. And I think he's gonna have a massive game out there. You have to lock him in on both sides, I think. And Porter's fine. The minutes are really, really nice for him. He's playing like 35 to 39 minutes, regardless of kind of the results of games. He's pretty safe with the minutes. So I'm fine. I prefer him to Wiggins. I think on FanDuel, Wiggins going up against Jay Crowder now, who's just back. We saw Wiggins struggle massively last game. Against Memphis. This kind of sets up similarly to where Memphis's defense is, similarly stingy to this Boston defense now, who started the season really poorly on the defensive end. But you add Marcus Smart, you add Jay Crowder, you add Al Horford over some of the guys that were trying out there, and their defense gets significantly better than it has been. So I don't want too much Wiggins in the spot. I think he's I don't know. Is he a tournament guy? Do you see upside in the spot?
I like him a lot. Yeah, how many minutes do you think Jay's going to play? 25 max?
He played 26, I think, last game. Let me check that again. He played 26 and a half, 27 last game. So I think he can get up to like 29 in this one potentially. So enough to be a thorn in the side of Wiggins.
That's fair.
I don't mind in this tournament. There are just not that many guys that pop, and you look at KD's going to have high ownership, GR3 is going to have high ownership. So you kind of get to the next few. It's Kawhi, Wiggins have that upside. So
if you're looking at just upside, like like a guy's ceiling, Wiggins, is up there in terms of like after. Obviously Durant's in a tier of his own, but after that, like who could put up a 50-point game? And then it's Wiggins,
Terrence Ross,
right. Yeah, I didn't mean like 50 actual points.
We didn't even mention him. DeMar Carroll's out too.
Yeah, I think it's a little thin with Ross.
I agree.
But he does have that 50-point ceiling technically.
Yeah, I don't mind Wiggins too much. I mean, he had 36 FanDuel points against MKG, who's obviously a very good defender, and he's shown that he can. He just has to get hot. So I mean, it's not an ideal matchup. It's definitely not a cash guy, but if you're just looking at a ceiling play for tournaments, I don't mind him at all. Okay, Jay, anyone else that's interesting to you? I mean, I think it's pretty easy for small forward here.
Yeah, I think on DK, and we can get into this when we talk about power forward, but two interesting plays. Jabari's one, and then we can bring up Markieff, both small forward eligible on DK. So, and then Ennis is small forward as well here. So DK, you got a lot more options on FanDuel. It's pretty cut and dry. There aren't many worth going in cash or tournaments. It's a limited group, but DK you can definitely spread it around a bit more.
Yeah, so I just want to bring this up. So Andrew Bogut just got ruled out for the Mavs. I want to say it like helps Harrison Barnes a little bit because he'll see a little bit more minutes in that front court out of necessity, but they're 16.5-point underdogs right now. They're at 83.5 points. It's just brutal.
Yeah, they're awful.
Yeah, that offense is so bad. I don't know. I wouldn't mind having zero exposure to that team overall. Just you look at Curry with his cheap price on FanDuel. I mean, you're not going, at least on DK, you don't have to consider him. He's too.
I think this might bump those guys to maybe GPP only.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
Salah Majri is getting the star for Andrew Bogut. Shout out to Salah.
Get a Salah.
We'll get to that later. But any interest in small Dwight Powell GPP exposure with Bogut out?
Always.
Let's get into power.
Carlisle hates him so much, but
yeah.
All right, well, let's get into power forward. Speaking of Dwight. All right, so let's jump in. So the guys that are up here at the top, we already talked about Blake. Been crushing lately. I mean, he's just pulling up his plus-minus chart. He's hit value in all of his last 10 games by an average of 6.52 FanDuel points. Just been amazing. But we have Draymond Green up at the top. He's in this game that has a really high spread. So that's tough. So the guys that are rating really high in your model, Justin, here is Keith, who we already said that we liked, and obviously Thad. But he's in that big spread game, but I think his price is still definitely okay enough to play him. But we talk about Keith as a tournament play, but then sort of looking at this spot with power forward, like is he become more cashish?
What site?
I was looking at FanDuel. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So FanDuel, you got Len there too.
Okay.
For me, I'm probably initially leaning Thad and Len in cash. Blake's my favorite tournament play at the position for sure. And I think in tournaments, getting off the Pacers is pretty wise. So I think fading Thad, he's 5,200. He just stands out so much that you could see the downside for him. And for me in tournaments, I would fade him entirely and pivot to Markieff.
So you would go with Thad and Len as your two power forwards?
That's where I'm at right now.
I think I would
cash.
I'd go with Thad and Markieff and cash.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all.
I would lean towards Thad and Markieff just because Markieff has higher upside for me. I think he can have a massive game. Like if he's honed in and the steals and blocks get going in this matchup, obviously against a Suns team that's very sloppy now and depleted. I get the obviously the argument. Alex Len is safer for me.
I don't think he's safer. I disagree on that. I think Keith has higher upside and a higher floor.
I don't know about the floor. I mean, you check his game log in spots before where he's played big minutes. He's had really, really bad games. Like the Rockets, he put up 18 FanDuel points. The Knicks, he put up
Keith?
he put up 20 FanDuel points in 35 minutes. Like he's a shooter. So if their shots aren't falling, it's a problem.
Yeah, but Lynn's not even a good rebounder. He's the center. He's going to play, 24 minutes even as the starter, and, they may roll Allen Williams. I think there's underappreciated risk here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Markieff is not risky by any means. I hate the power forward spot. I just am not in love with Lynn as much as a cash game play as much as other people are, I guess.
Okay, that's fair.
It comes down to price for me, really, more than anything. All three of these guys are cheap, and that's why they're three of the top four, in FanDuel at that spot. So, it's going to come down to who you trust the most. I mean, to cash first tournaments, it's entirely different. So
where are you at with Draymond, Jay?
He's in the spot. It's a spot where Draymond is at his best when power forward's not deep and you don't have those value plays.
Yeah,
because he's not overpriced or anything. I like his price. I love his floor. I would like to go him in cash over these other guys, but realistically, it's just really difficult, and you're kind of just wasting salary. Spending.
I think if you're going to get up to Draymond, figure out a way to get to Blake. Is my thought on it.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And then Justin, do you want to talk about Frank the Tank, or
he has to be in that mix just with Zeller out now and Hibbert still on a minutes limit. I think Hibbert came out that he's going to be on an 18-minute restriction again today. So we seen last game Frank the Tank got 36 minutes against the Pelicans. Only put up 25 points, which is a little concerning, 25 FanDuel points. But, he's still, 4,300 playing 26, 28 minutes probably in this spot, 24 to 28, somewhere around there. I think he's in the mix as a pump play. I just shy away generally from these Hornets frontcourt players just because they kind of switch off having big games. Like Cody Zeller had a stretch there who was absolutely smashing. Marvin Williams had a good stretch at some point, and Roy Hibbert, I think, had a couple of good games to start the season too. So I think Kaminsky's fine. Kaminsky is probably, my top value play on FanDuel. Kind of looking at outside of Markieff at 53, you're kind of looking at John Lord, Marvin Williams, Amir Johnson, Dwight Powell. Dwight Powell might be up there too, but Kaminsky's fine. But I'm not gonna cash him.
That's fair. Well, one guy that I really like that we haven't mentioned yet. This is tournament only by
Jabari.
Jabari, I love Jabari.
Jabari's my guy. Jabari's probably one of my favorite tournament plays. I like attacking that front court.
And he has massive game potential.
Oh, absolutely. His field goal attempts are absurd lately. So for me, looking at the price difference of you're either saving here and you're going those cheap guys, or you're spending up for Blake, maybe some Draymond. But Jabari's in that price range where a lot of people are just going to overlook it, and that makes me want more term exposure to him.
He has pretty low ownership projections in our model, so definitely a contrarian play. And a guy, we've seen him just pop off.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's at 43.5 FanDuel points. Yeah, the last 5 games, he's either been at 20 FanDuel points or 45 to 50. So, which is just the perfect GPP play,
Yep.
All right, cool. And anyone else? You guys mentioned Dwight. Do you want to talk about Dwight Powell before we move on to center?
I wish he played more. I don't know. I wish he got more minutes.
Yeah, I'm not on him.
He's a GPP only play for me. If you want to get weird with the roster construction, and maybe he plays 24 to 26 minutes, and you can get a nice, nice contribution out of him. He's 3,700 on FanDuel, so not too bad. Tobias Harris is one last guy I'll throw in as, he's not nearly as attractive or has a ceiling that Jabari has in terms of tournament play, but I think this is an interesting spot for him against Houston. He's been playing massive minutes lately. I think he's interesting. He's going to have really, really, really low ownership, I think, just based on his recent play too. So just want to throw him some love. I think if you make it 100 lineups, you can have 1 and 2 Tobias Harris lineups in there at least.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Let's move on to center. We'll finish this up. So at center, I think is probably the most intriguing position here today. We have Allen Williams, who's just going to have massive ownership at his low price point. But then there's so many studs in the slate. I mean, we got Cat, we got Crompton Town. Sorry, we have Whiteside. We have Embiid. So I actually thought about doing this as one of our 2 games, but I figure we would just let Jay just dream and rant about this for 2 minutes. We have Goat Side versus Embiid. I mean, what are you even doing?
Well, give me all the Whiteside here. He just has that ceiling. Again, it goes back to with Embiid, his price is caught up to where it's not an auto cash play. You got Allen Williams. You got other guys to where Embiid's kind of fallen off the radar, unfortunately, until his minutes limit increases. So you look at the ceiling of all these other guys, Embiid just doesn't have it. So for me, I'm going to have very little exposure because I don't think you're getting enough value in cash that you can be getting elsewhere. And I don't think you're getting enough raw upside as, a lot of these other guys. Center is absolutely loaded. So unfortunately for me, I'm cutting out Embiid from my exposure today. I think you start at Whiteside. Obviously, we like Cat against a weak rebounding Boston team. Big time there. So, and you just go down the list. It's like it's absolutely stacked. Miles Turner, I'm assuming he's fully healthy, is a great tournament play. Tournament play only though because we don't like that spread. But it's just littered with tournament plays. Capella's been playing great lately. Good value there as well. Drummond on the other side.
Yeah, what's his minutes issue lately though?
Capella?
No, Drummond.
Oh, well, Justin, you want to chime in on Drummond's minutes?
He's been playing 29, 30 the last couple. I mean,
that's kind of where he settled in. Okay. I think he had that injury a while ago that he's over now. I don't think there's an injury issue there, but that's just kind of what he plays.
That's what he averages on the year.
Yeah, I mean, optimistically, you're kind of hoping for like 33 to 35 minutes from him. I think that's kind of like his thing. That's kind of why, for me, Drummond is always a tournament play, just because he doesn't play enough minutes. Jay and I actually went through a list last night.
Yeah, there's only 8 centers that average 30 minutes a game.
Yeah,
Justin nailed them all, of course.
Yeah. I think Whiteside's the stud.
It's it, yeah.
It's not even close. So Whiteside last game, I was tracking this. He didn't get his first rebound until like midway through the second quarter. Mm-hmm. I think at the midway through the second quarter, he had like 6 points and 0 rebounds, and then he finished with 47 FanDuel points
and 18 rebounds.
Yeah, 18 to 18. It's unbelievable.
I mean, his block upside on top of the double-double. I mean, yeah, he's easily the guy with the most upside.
Like the sequences that make me like love Whiteside so much is like one, like in 4 seconds, he'll get like 4 offensive rebounds, like missed shot, offensive rebound, missed shot, offensive rebound, missed shot, offensive rebound, then put back dunk. Like like he has those stretches where he can just put up like
16 fantasy points in a possession.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
So Whiteside is where it is for me. I don't think you have to get too there. He's so safe, and the minutes, especially with Willie Reed out, they've kind of soured on McRoberts shooting. I think Whiteside's minutes are super safe here. I think he can easily see 35 minutes in this one.
He might hit his implied value. Like he's got to hit 37. He might hit that in rebounds and blocks. And if he just scores a single point, like he's going to exceed value. Like it's just ridiculous. Had 25 rebounds the other night.
So DK, it makes a lot of sense. I think to go 2 centers. You lock in Allen Williams. What about FanDuel? I think everybody's going to be on Allen Williams to afford Harden and Durant. Does it make sense in tournaments to potentially even lock in Whiteside and just fade big stuff?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could probably get away because Allen Williams is going to provide.
He helps, yeah.
Get you up to some of these other guys if you want to go. Curry and Harden. But yeah, I mean, you should definitely probably have lower than the field.
I get it. You can have lower than the field, but you're not fading him. I mean, Williams. It's like you can get contrarian at certain spots, but like we've said it before. You can be contrarian, not stupid. I think fading Allen Williams, just given what he's.
Then you can't get Whiteside on FanDuel.
Yeah,
I think in tournaments you have to fade Allen Williams.
Allen Williams might have the Whiteside game at 42.
Dude, you don't understand though. Allen Williams, his permanent stats are better than Whiteside's this season.
Down to minutes.
But like,
it's more just ownership.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
Less
right.
than the field, but not a full fade, I think.
Right.
In tournaments, cash, I'm going Allen Williams cash. Yeah.
Yeah, and then last guy that I have a question about it is Marcus Gasol. With just this rotating weird front court for Charlotte. They always seem to be pretty good defensively, no matter who's there. But he's rating really high in your models, Justin. I'm curious, is that a lot because of price?
Yeah, I don't think he's kind of in the mix. I don't like. He's a guy I'm probably going to bump down a little bit after we get off this pod.
It's price for him. He's a season low.
So cheap.
Right. On FanDuel.
Yeah.
Right. So,
splashed him.
Yes, I mean, because he's been pretty poor as of late as well. That doesn't help either. I get your point about the Charlotte front court, but I think there are guys that offer a lot more overall upside than Marcus Gasol. You kind of look at Marcus Gasol, the rebounds just have been horrible. Over 7 rebounds, I think, hasn't been over 7 rebounds since November 4th. Against the Clippers.
Yeah, he's not a good rebounder.
Yeah, just the rebounds, and then the dimes are down a little bit with, I don't know, it's just not enough overall. Versatility. The steals and blocks aren't there either. He's probably going to get like a steal and a block a game, which is okay, but not going to win you a tournament. So, Gasol's in that weird spot where he's obviously not good enough in cash with Whiteside and Allen Williams, and doesn't offer you the upside you need in tournaments either.
Yeah, just no man's land. And the only last guy that we'll mention, and we can move off of the pod here, is Pau. He's going to come with 0 ownership, and he's playing against Dallas without Bogut. It seems like a sort of game where Pau could play 28 minutes and just put up a ridiculous line. I definitely don't love him.
I would say this is a game that he could play 24 minutes because they're going to blow this team out like crazy. That's why I'm probably off Kawhi Leonard too, because he's going to have this stuff, so many stats in such a short amount of time, and Pau especially.
Yeah, I don't love Pau, but I'm saying that 1% ownership.
Yeah. Dallas plays too slow, and you already look at their offense in this game, projected offense. It's just this game's going to be so ugly. I don't want anything to do with it on both sides, really, at this point.
So obviously, I think your shot in the dark. A shot in the dark maybe Al Horford.
Yeah, big game.
I think that's kind of like your more obscure guy that you can get a really low ownership and take a shot at. So we had 47.7 FanDuel points in his return after missing 5 months with a concussion. The matchup here isn't that great, obviously against
not for him.
Yeah, but I was shocked, how many minutes he played, how well he did in his first game back. So you can take a look at him if you want. He's cheap
on DK.
Yeah, what is he on DK?
65.
Yeah, 65. Yeah, that's a good price.
Okay. All right, we will end it there. As always, thank you for listening. I think we're going to not be able to do a pod this Friday because of the Thanksgiving break. And also, it's just a massive game. It's a 15-game slate on Friday. So we're going to be working hard on getting the models and everything ready for you guys. So we'll be off the rest of this week. But we'll be back on Monday. As always, thanks again for listening. Follow FantasyLabs NBA. And good luck tonight. Hopefully see you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck, guys.